Emotional control's hidden secret. 80% of people who struggle with emotional control have one thing in common. They do not understand what is happening inside their own body. This is not a guess. This is science. A systematic review of 219 studies, cognition and emotion, found that most people attempt to control their emotions every single day, yet very few understand how emotion regulation actually works. The result? They fail, they react, they explode, they shut down. Then they feel guilty about it. What you will learn today, I'm going to change that for you. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how your emotions work inside your brain and body. You will have specific techniques that have been tested in laboratories and proven to work. And you will have a step-by-step plan you can use starting tonight. Beyond vague advice. But here is what makes this different. I am not going to give you vague advice like just breathe or think positive. I am going to show you the biological machinery running inside you right now. When you understand the machinery, you can control it. When you do not understand it, the machinery controls you. Let me show you what I mean. Your amygdala explained. Right now, there is a part of your brain called the amygdala. It is small, shaped like an almond, and it sits deep inside your head. Research from Oxford Academic Social Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience shows this tiny structure is responsible for processing emotional information, especially threatening or negative experiences. When something upsets you, when someone says something that makes you angry, when you feel afraid or anxious, your amygdala is the first responder. It activates within milliseconds, often before you are even conscious of what is happening. Prefrontal cortex connection. But here is where it gets interesting. Your amygdala does not work alone. Above it, in the front part of your brain, sits the prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking brain. This is where logic lives. This is where you make decisions, plan for the future, and consider consequences. A meta-analysis published in Social Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience Science Direct found that these two brain regions are connected and they communicate constantly. Calming your emotional brain. When the connection is strong, your prefrontal cortex can calm your amygdala. It can say, "Wait, think about this. Is this really a threat?" And your emotional reaction becomes smaller, more controlled. But when you are stressed, tired, or overwhelmed, this connection weakens. The research shows Oxford academic, the prefrontal cortex loses its grip. The amygdala runs free, and you react in ways you later regret. This is not a character flaw. This is biology. A powerful technique. Ahead. Now, I am going to tell you something that will change how you think about emotional control forever. Stay until the end because in step 7, I will reveal a technique so simple that most people dismiss it, yet research shows it reduces amygdala activity by a significant margin within seconds. Most people have never heard of it. Let us begin with step 1. Understand the stress response. Step 1. Understand the stress response. Before you can control your emotions, you must understand what happens when stress hits your body. This is not optional information. This is the foundation. When you perceive a threat, whether it is real or imagined, your brain activates something called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is usually called the HPA axis. The HPA axis pathway. According to Harvard Medical School research Harvard Health, here is what happens. Your hypothalamus, a small region at the base of your brain, releases a chemical called corticotropin-releasing hormone. This travels to your pituitary gland, which then releases another hormone that travels through your blood to your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys. These glands then release cortisol. Cortisol's double-edged cortisol is your main stress hormone. It is not bad in small amounts. It actually helps you wake up in the morning. It gives you energy when you need it. But when cortisol stays high for too long, problems begin. A study published in Neurology PMC examined over 2,000 people and found that those with the highest cortisol levels performed worse on tests of memory, visual perception, and attention. Cortisol damages brain structure. Even more concerning, high cortisol was associated with physical changes in brain structure, including lower brain volumes in areas important for thinking and memory. This association was particularly strong in women. Research from the Frontiers in Endocrinology. Frontiers explains that chronic stress keeps your HPA axis activated constantly. Imagine a car engine running at high speed even when parked. Eventually, something breaks down. Recognizing stress signals. The first step to controlling your emotions is recognizing when your stress response has been activated. Your heart beats faster, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense, your palms might sweat. These are not random sensations, they are signals. Your body is telling you that the stress system is running. Once you recognize these signals, you can do something about them. And that brings us to step 2. Master your breathing. Step 2. Master your breathing. This might sound simple, but the science behind it is extraordinary. Inside your body runs a nerve called the vagus nerve. It is the longest nerve in your autonomic nervous system, stretching from your brainstem all the way down to your gut. Research published in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience (PMC) shows this nerve is the primary pathway for activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your calming system. Vagus nerve activation. When the vagus nerve is stimulated, your heart rate slows, your blood pressure drops, and your body shifts from fight or flight mode into rest and digest mode. Here is the powerful part. You can stimulate your vagus nerve on purpose through specific breathing techniques. A study published in the International Journal of Psychophysiology Science Direct found that just 2 minutes of deep breathing with longer exhalations increased heart rate variability, which is a measure of vagus nerve activity, and improved decision-making under stress. 2 minutes. That is less time than it takes to check your phone. Exhalation is key. The key is the exhalation. When you breathe out slowly, you activate the vagus nerve more strongly than when you breathe in. Research cited in Psychology Today. Psychology Today confirms that breathing patterns with longer exhalations reliably reduce stress and improve cognitive function. Here is a specific technique you can use right now. Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 1 count. Breathe out through your mouth for 6 counts. The exhale is longer than the inhale. This is intentional. Deep belly breathing benefits. According to research from Cedars-Sinai, slow, deep belly breathing shifts your focus away from stressful thoughts and toward the rhythm of your breath. This simple act activates the relaxation response. Do this for 15 to 20 breaths when you feel stressed. A study referenced in NeoFlow found that after 15 to 20 minutes of slow, deep breathing, your spontaneous breathing rate slows down on its own, which is a sign of sustained vagus nerve activation. Daily breathing practice. Practice this every day, not just when you are stressed. The more you practice, the faster your body learns to calm itself. But breathing alone is not enough. Let us move to step 3. Step 3. Change how you think about the situation. Scientists call this cognitive reappraisal. It is one of the most studied and effective strategies for emotional regulation. Cognitive reappraisal works. A meta-analysis in Cerebral Cortex (PMC) found that cognitive reappraisal is highly effective at regulating emotions without the cognitive and physiological costs of other strategies. Unlike suppressing emotions, which often backfires, reappraisal works by changing how you interpret a situation before your emotional response becomes too strong. Interpretation creates emotion. Here is how it works. Your emotions do not come from events themselves. They come from your interpretation of events. If someone cuts you off in traffic, you might think, that person is rude and disrespectful. This thought creates anger. But if you think, maybe they are rushing to the hospital, your emotional response changes completely. Research from the Journal of Occupational and Organizational Psychology Wiley found that cognitive reappraisal interventions effectively reduce negative emotions and enhance positive emotions in workplace settings. Workplace reappraisal benefits. Employees who learned these techniques showed reduced counterproductive behavior and improved overall job performance. There are 2 main types of reappraisal. The first is reinterpreting the meaning. You look at the same situation but find a different explanation. The person who criticized your work was not attacking you personally. They were trying to help you improve. Psychological distancing technique. The second type is psychological distancing. You imagine you are watching the situation from far away, as if it were happening to someone else. Both approaches engage your prefrontal cortex and reduce amygdala activity. A study published in Affective Science Springer found that cognitive reappraisal is particularly effective for regulating emotions that have a clear cause. When you know what is making you upset, reappraisal helps you think about it differently. Questions to ask yourself. Practice. Asking yourself these questions when you feel upset. Is there another way to see this situation? What would I tell a friend who was experiencing this? Will this matter in 5 years? These questions activate your thinking brain and give your prefrontal cortex time to regulate your amygdala. Now, here is something most people do not know. There is a technique even simpler than reappraisal, and it works in seconds. I will explain it in step 7. But first, we need to cover some essential foundations. Move your body. Step 4. Move your body. Physical exercise is not just good for your muscles, it directly changes your brain chemistry and your capacity for emotional regulation. A comprehensive analysis published in BJM Sports Medicine Medical News today found that physical activity is 1.5 times more effective at reducing mild to moderate symptoms of depression, anxiety, and psychological stress than medication or cognitive behavior therapy. This is remarkable. Exercise outperformed medication and therapy. Exercise reduces stress reactivity. Research published in PMC explains why. Regular aerobic exercise is associated with lower reactivity in the sympathetic nervous system and the HPA axis. In simpler terms, people who exercise regularly produce smaller stress responses when challenges arise. Their bodies have learned to stay calmer. Another systematic review, PMC, found that people with high physical activity levels had a decreased risk of developing depression by 17% and reduced odds of developing anxiety by 26% compared to those with low activity levels. How exercise changes brain. The mechanisms are multiple. Exercise releases endorphins, which improve mood. It increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that supports brain health. It reduces inflammation throughout the body. According to researchers PMC, exercise may also promote neurogenesis, which is the growth of new brain cells, particularly in the hippocampus, a region important for memory and emotional processing. Exercise amount needed. How much exercise do you need? The research suggests that 150 minutes per week of moderate activity produces significant benefits. That is about 20 to 30 minutes per day, 5 days a week. Walking counts, swimming counts, dancing counts. A study cited in Frontiers found that medium and long-term exercise programs had measurable effects on reducing anxiety in college students. Even one session helps. Even a single session of exercise can help. Research shows Frontiers in Psychiatry that one vigorous exercise session can help reduce symptoms for hours afterward. Make movement a non-negotiable part of your routine. Your emotions will thank you. Step 5. Protect your sleep. This might be the most underrated factor in emotional control. Sleep deprivation's dramatic impact. A study using functional MRI imaging PMC found something striking. One night of sleep deprivation triggers a 60% increase in amygdala reactivity to negative images compared to a normal night of sleep. 60% after just one night. The same study found that sleep deprivation reduces functional connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and amygdala. Remember what we discussed earlier. The prefrontal cortex is supposed to calm the amygdala. When you do not sleep enough, this connection weakens and your emotional reactions become larger and harder to control. Sleep loss disrupts regulation. Research from PNAS confirms that sleep loss disrupts mood and emotion regulation abilities. The amygdala becomes hyperactive while the brain regions that should control it become less effective. Another study published in Sleep Research PMC explains that adequate sleep strengthens the functional connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, promoting balanced emotional responses and resilience to stressors. REM sleep's vital role. REM sleep, the dreaming stage, plays a vital role by consolidating emotionally important memories and reducing their emotional intensity over time. How much sleep do you need? Most adults require 7 to 9 hours. But it is not just about quantity. Quality matters too. Here are practical steps. Keep a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and waking at the same time daily. Sleep hygiene tips. Avoid screens for at least an hour before bed, as blue light interferes with melatonin production. Keep your bedroom cool and dark. Limit caffeine after noon. According to research NeoFlow, practicing slow, deep breathing before bed increases nighttime vagal activity and promotes faster, deeper sleep. The breathing practice from step 2 becomes even more powerful when used at bedtime. When you protect your sleep, you are literally rebuilding the brain circuits needed for emotional control. Skip this step, and everything else becomes harder. Train your brain meditating. Step 6. Train your brain with meditation. This is where the science becomes truly exciting. Research from Harvard Medical School Harvard Gazette found that just 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation produced measurable changes in brain structure. Participants who meditated for an average of 27 minutes daily showed increased gray matter in the hippocampus, which is important for learning and memory, and in structures associated with self-awareness and compassion. Meditation shrinks amygdala. Even more remarkable, the same researchers PMC found that participants reported reductions in stress that correlated with decreased gray matter in the amygdala. The part of the brain responsible for fear and stress actually became smaller. Another study published in Neuroplasticity PMC found that just 10 hours of mindfulness meditation induced gray matter changes in key brain regions associated with self-awareness, emotion, and cognition. These findings suggest structural brain changes can occur relatively quickly. Meditators' brains differ. Research from Massachusetts General Hospital Mass General showed that meditation experience is associated with increased cortical thickness. The brains of meditators appear structurally different from non-meditators in areas related to attention and sensory processing. What does this mean practically? It means meditation is not just relaxation, it is exercise for your brain. Just as lifting weights builds muscle, meditation builds the neural circuits needed for emotional regulation. Start small with meditation. You do not need to meditate for hours. Studies show that even 4 weeks of mindfulness training can produce physical changes in brain structure. Start with 5 minutes daily. Focus on your breath. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back. This simple practice, repeated daily, reshapes your brain. Research also shows PMC that long-term meditation practice remodels the way information flows through the brain, enhancing emotional regulation and reducing stress. The key is consistency. A little every day is better than a lot once a week. Name your emotions. Step 7. Name your emotions. This is the technique I promised you. It is so simple that most people dismiss it. But the science behind it is powerful. A landmark study led by Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, PubMed, found that putting feelings into words, a process called affect labeling, diminishes the response of the amygdala to negative emotional images. Simply naming what you feel reduces the intensity of that feeling. Labeling activates prefrontal cortex. The mechanism is fascinating. According to the research Psychological Science, when you label an emotion, activity increases in the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, while activity decreases in the amygdala. The act of naming engages your thinking brain and gives it control over your emotional brain. A study published in PMC found that affect labeling efficiently reduces distress, particularly in highly emotional situations. The researchers suggest this could be used as a simple intervention for anxiety reduction. Name it to tame it. This is sometimes called name it to tame it. When you say, I am feeling anxious or I am feeling angry, you create psychological distance from the emotion. You transform an overwhelming experience into information that can be processed. Research in brain imaging Appleton PC confirms this pattern. When people verbally label their emotions, amygdala activity drops while prefrontal cortex activity increases. Language acts like a dimmer switch on emotional arousal. Precision in labeling matters. Precision matters. The more specific your label, the better it works. Instead of saying, I feel bad, try, I feel frustrated because my work was not recognized. Instead of, I am stressed, try, I am anxious about the presentation tomorrow. Studies suggest, 6 seconds, that a granular vocabulary builds emotional literacy and improves regulation. Practice this daily. When you notice any strong emotion, pause and name it. Say it out loud or write it down. This simple act activates the prefrontal cortex and reduces amygdala reactivity. Practice gratitude. Step 8. Practice gratitude. This might seem unrelated to emotional control, but the research is clear. A study conducted at Indiana University Greater Good Berkeley found that participants who wrote gratitude letters reported significantly better mental health 4 weeks and 12 weeks after the exercise ended, compared to those who wrote about negative experiences or received only counseling. Gratitude trains the brain. The researchers also found that practicing gratitude may train the brain to be more sensitive to gratitude over time, creating a positive feedback loop that contributes to improved mental health. A meta-analysis of 64 randomized clinical trials, PMC, demonstrated that gratitude interventions lead to greater feelings of gratitude, better mental health, and fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression. Participants also experienced improved mood and positive emotions. Gratitude's brain effects. How does gratitude affect the brain? According to research from Positive Psychology. Positive Psychology. Gratitude activates the hypothalamus, which regulates sleep, metabolism, and stress responses. It also increases activity in the prefrontal cortex and releases dopamine and serotonin, neurotransmitters associated with happiness. Studies published in Harvard Health asked participants to write about things they were grateful for each week. After 10 weeks, those who wrote about gratitude were more optimistic, felt better about their lives, and even exercised more than those who wrote about irritations. Specific gratitude practice. Here is a specific practice. Each night before bed, write down 3 things you are grateful for. Be specific. Instead of, I am grateful for my family, write, I am grateful that my sister called to check on me today. This specificity makes the practice more powerful. According to Mayo Clinic Health System, feeling thankful improves sleep, mood, and immunity while decreasing depression, anxiety, and chronic pain. Think of gratitude as a tool that shifts your attention from threats to resources. Build your emotional vocabulary. Step 9. Build your emotional vocabulary. The language you use shapes your emotional experience. Research on emotion construction. Shiro Health suggests that emotions arise when bodily sensations are categorized using emotion concepts. The words you have available determine how you experience your feelings. Vague versus precise labels. People with limited emotional vocabulary often describe their feelings in vague terms like bad or upset. This vagueness makes emotions harder to understand and regulate. In contrast, people with rich emotional vocabulary can distinguish between feeling disappointed, hurt, frustrated, and resentful. Each of these states suggests different causes and different solutions. According to research on affect labeling Wikipedia, the brain treats different emotion words differently. Precision helps the brain. Anxiety, apprehension, and unease may feel similar but represent slightly different predictions about your situation. More precise labels give your brain better information to work with. Here is how to build your vocabulary. Learn emotion words from lists or charts such as Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions. Notice the subtle differences between similar emotions. When you feel something, spend time finding the most accurate word for it. Questions for emotional clarity. Ask yourself, is this sadness or disappointment? Is this anger or hurt? Is this fear or uncertainty? These questions deepen your understanding of your emotional life and make regulation easier. Research shows Brain First Institute that this skill promotes resilience by helping you recognize patterns in your emotional responses. When you understand your emotions better, you can respond to them more effectively. Create response plans. Step 10. Create response plans. Emotional control is easier when you plan ahead. Research on emotion regulation choice. Cognition and emotion shows that people often fail to regulate their emotions because they do not think about strategies until they are already overwhelmed. By that point, the prefrontal cortex is struggling and the amygdala is running strong. Implementation intentions help. The solution is to create plans before stressful situations occur. Psychologists call these implementation intentions. They follow a simple format. When X happens, I will do Y. For example, when I feel my heart racing before a meeting, I will take 5 deep breaths with long exhalations. When someone criticizes my work, I will pause for 3 seconds before responding. When I feel overwhelmed by my to-do list, I will write down 1 task I can complete in the next 10 minutes. Planning reduces stress decisions. These plans move the decision-making from the moment of stress to a calmer time. When the trigger occurs, you already know what to do. You do not have to think, you just execute. Studies on emotion regulation in daily life frontiers found that people regulate their emotions most often when they want to feel better. Having specific strategies ready makes this process more effective. Write down your 3 most common emotional triggers. For each one, create a specific response plan. Review these plans regularly until they become automatic. Connect with others. Step 11. Connect with others. Human beings are social creatures. Our emotional regulation systems are designed to work in connection with other people. Research published in Science Direct found that people frequently regulate others' emotions and that strategies like listening and reframing are commonly used. Empathy and agreeableness were associated with how people helped others regulate their emotions. Receiving support helps, but receiving support matters too. Studies on social connection, positive psychology, show that expressing gratitude to others strengthens social bonds and improves emotional well-being for both parties. When you are struggling emotionally, talking to someone you trust can help. Research on affect labeling, PMC, suggests that even simply describing your feelings to another person can reduce their intensity. Sharing versus rumination. However, there is a difference between helpful sharing and unhelpful rumination. Helpful sharing involves naming emotions, seeking perspective, and moving towards solutions. Rumination involves repeating the same thoughts without progress. Studies show, Science Direct, that rumination is associated with increased negative affect over time. Practice sharing with intention. Tell someone how you feel, ask for their perspective, then decide on one small action you can take. This transforms emotional expression from a passive release into an active strategy. Accept what you cannot change. Step 12. Accept what you cannot change. Some emotions cannot be eliminated. Some situations cannot be changed. Wisdom involves knowing the difference. Research on mindful acceptance. PMC suggests that acceptance, which means allowing emotions to be present without trying to change them, can be as effective as reappraisal for some types of distress. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means acknowledging reality while choosing your response. Flexibility in regulation. Studies on emotion regulation flexibility. Cognition and emotion found that the most emotionally healthy people are those who can switch between different strategies depending on the situation. Sometimes you need to change your thinking. Sometimes you need to accept your feelings and take action anyway. When emotions persist despite your efforts, consider whether acceptance might be appropriate. Ask yourself, can I change this situation? If yes, take action. If no, practice accepting the emotion while not letting it control your behavior. This is not weakness. According to Research Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience, the ability to use both expression and acceptance of emotions is important for maintaining mental health. Putting it all together. You now have 12 evidence-based strategies for emotional control. Let me give you a simple daily plan to implement them. Morning. When you wake up, take 5 deep breaths with long exhalations to activate your vagus nerve. Think of one thing you are grateful for. This primes your brain for the day. During the day, when you notice a strong emotion, pause and name it specifically. Ask yourself if there is another way to see the situation. If stress builds, take a breathing break. Your daily practice plan. Evening, exercise for at least 20 minutes if possible. This could be walking, stretching, or any movement you enjoy. Before bed, write down 3 things you are grateful for from the day. Practice your breathing technique for 5 minutes. Ensure your bedroom is dark, cool, and quiet for optimal sleep. Weekly, review your emotional triggers and response plans. Practice meditation for at least 10 minutes, 3 times per week. Connect meaningfully with at least one person about how you are feeling. Consistency over intensity. This is not complicated. The science shows that consistency matters more than intensity. Small practices repeated daily reshape your brain more effectively than occasional intense efforts. Let me leave you with this understanding. Emotional control is not about never feeling emotions. It is about having the ability to respond to your emotions rather than react to them. Research confirms PMC that people who can regulate their emotions effectively have greater well-being, better relationships, higher income, and more success in their careers. Start today. Change everything. The strategies in this video are not theory. They are tested, they are proven, and they are available to you starting today. Your brain can change. Your emotional responses can change. Your life can change. But nothing changes until you start. Begin with one strategy. Practice it for a week, then add another. Within a month, you will notice differences in how you respond to challenges. Within a year, you will be a different person. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. The tools are now in your hands. Thank you for watching this entire video. If you found value here, share it with someone who struggles with their emotions. Everyone deserves to understand how their mind works. Everyone deserves the ability to choose their responses to life. I will see you in the next video.